I will never forget the day she walked into my son Robert's grand wedding reception. Uninvited. The ballroom was glowing with chandeliers, the air heavy with roses, and Robert stood tall in his expensive tuxedo, holding the hand of his brand new wife, Melissa, the daughter of a wealthy Chicago banker. The guests clapped, the photographers snapped pictures, and I sat at the front table, smiling politely, though deep inside. Something gnawed at me, and then the door slammed open. Every head in that room turned. A woman stepped inside, dressed in a fitted black gown, her long hair cascading like a shadow across her shoulders. Her eyes were locked on Robert. Cold, steady, sharp enough to cut glass. I recognized her at once. "Dear God," I whispered under my breath, "it's Claire." The entire room froze, as if time itself held its breath. And with each slow step she took toward the stage, I knew. She hadn't come for congratulations. She had come for revenge. And the look on Robert's face, my son, the man who had everything, he went pale as a ghost, because he knew exactly what was coming. But let me take you back. Before that night of roses and chandeliers, back to when it all began. Back to when my son Robert was still just a boy. And Claire was nothing more than his high school sweetheart. Robert met her when he was 17. She was a year younger, bright-eyed, full of dreams, and too kind for her own good. Claire wasn't rich. She came from a modest home in Joliet. Her father fixed cars. Her mother worked long hours at a diner. But Claire had something money couldn't buy: loyalty. And Lord, she gave every piece of that loyalty to my son. I watched it all with my own eyes. Robert was a smart boy, but lazy. He had ideas of becoming a lawyer, of making a name in Chicago, but ideas alone don't pay tuition. I knew my son, if life didn't push him, he'd slip through the cracks. Claire, though, she pushed. She pushed hard. When Robert's scholarship didn't cover his books, Claire picked up an extra shift at the coffee shop. When his rent was late, she handed over her savings without hesitation. When he doubted himself, ready to give up on law school, Claire was the one burning midnight oil beside him, quizzing him on cases she barely understood herself. That girl. She was the wind beneath his wings. And yet, this is the part that cuts me deep. Robert started to change. The more polished he became, the more polished he demanded his world to be. Claire, with her thrift store shoes and secondhand dresses, no longer fit the picture he wanted to paint. I saw it in the way he looked at her, less with love, more with embarrassment. I warned him once, late at night when he came home after graduation. "Robert," I said, "don't forget the hands that held you up. Don't forget Claire." He just laughed. "Mom, you don't get it. I can't drag her with me into the life I'm building. She's not the kind of woman who belongs there." Those words still sting in my ears. But Claire, sweet, blinded Claire, she didn't see it. She was still fighting for him. Even as he slowly slipped away, the day everything snapped was the day Robert brought home Melissa, with her perfect blonde curls, her diamond bracelet flashing even when she raised a glass of water. Her father was a man of power in Chicago. Her mother, the type who never wore the same dress twice. And when Melissa smiled at Robert, he looked at her the way he used to look at Claire. That was when I knew Claire's days were numbered. And sure enough, a month later, Robert sat Claire down at a little diner and ended it. Just like that. No warning, no gratitude. He told her it was over, that he needed to marry someone who matched his future. Do you know what Claire did? She didn't scream. She didn't throw coffee in his face. She sat there, silent, her hands trembling as she clutched the mug, tears running down her cheeks without a sound. And she said only one thing before she walked out. "You'll regret this, Robert. One day you'll regret it." Now, standing in that glittering ballroom years later, watching her storm toward my son in her black gown, I realized that day had come. She stopped right in front of him, her lips curling into a smile that wasn't a smile at all, the kind of smile that makes your stomach twist. "Congratulations, Robert," she said loud enough for every guest to hear. "I see you finally got the rich wife you always wanted." The crowd gasped. Melissa stiffened, clutching Robert's hand tighter. The photographers lowered their cameras, uncertain if they should keep snapping. My son's face, red as fire, white as ash, all at once. But Claire wasn't finished. "Tell me," she went on, tilting her head, her voice dripping with venom. "Did you ever tell Melissa who paid your rent? Who bought your books? Who made sure you didn't flunk out before you became the big man you are today?" I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. The truth was about to spill, and there was no stopping it. Claire reached into her purse, pulled out a folded stack of letters, and held them high for all to see. "These," she declared, her voice echoing through the hall, "are the letters Robert wrote me while I was breaking my back to keep him afloat. Every promise, every vow, every dirty little secret. Do you want to hear what your perfect husband wrote to me, Melissa?" The entire room erupted in whispers. Guests stood from their seats. Melissa's face turned pale, and my son, my only son, looked like a man about to drown. The silence in that ballroom was deafening. Claire stood tall, her black gown hugging her like armor, her hand raised high with those folded letters, my son's old promises. Every word soaked in the blood of his ambition. I swear you could hear Melissa's bracelet clink against her wineglass as her hand trembled. She turned her head slowly, like she was looking at a stranger instead of her husband of just a few hours. "Robert," she whispered, her voice thin. "What is she talking about?" And my son, my stubborn, foolish son, couldn't find his tongue. "Claire," he stammered, don't do this here." But Claire only smiled wider, that cold, dangerous smile. "Why not?" she asked. "Everyone deserves to know the truth. How you swore you'd marry me once you graduated. How you said we'd build a life together, no matter how hard it got. How I fed you, clothed you, kept the lights on in your apartment while you chased your big dreams." Her voice cracked. Just once, but she caught herself quick. "And then," she hissed, "you threw me away like garbage." For her, the guests gasped. People love scandal more than champagne, and I saw phones rise into the air, recording every word. Robert tried to snatch the letters from her hand, but Claire jerked back, holding them higher. "You want them?" she said. "Then maybe I'll read just one. Right here. Right now, before I tell you what happened next. I need you to understand something." Claire wasn't lying. I remember those days well. Robert in his tiny Chicago apartment, his fridge nearly empty. The landlord banging on his door for rent. He'd come crying to me, and I'd send what little I could, but it was Claire who truly kept him afloat. That girl worked double shifts at a diner on 18th Street. Sometimes she'd walk in the rain at midnight just to bring him food. And Robert, oh, he'd write her letters. Sweet, sappy letters full of promises. I saw some of them once. I'll never forget this, Claire. "You're my angel. One day, when I'm standing tall, you'll be right beside me." Those were his words. But ambition is a hungry beast. And once Robert tasted the world of power and wealth, he forgot every vow he made. So when Claire lifted those letters in the middle of his fairy tale wedding, I knew my son was standing on the edge of a cliff with no ground beneath him. "Don't you dare." Robert growled, his voice low but shaking. "Why not?" Claire shot back. "Melissa should know who she really married. Everyone here should know." Melissa's face twisted, half confusion, half fury. She grabbed Robert's arm, digging her nails into his tuxedo sleeve. "Robert," she demanded, "is this true?" Robert tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow. "Baby, she's bitter. She's nothing. Don't listen to her." But Claire didn't back down. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of years she'd carried alone. "Read it, then." A man from the crowd shouted. "A guest drunk on champagne and scandal. Let's hear it." And just like that, the crowd joined in chanting, murmuring, hungry for drama. Robert looked around, sweat breaking on his brow, his perfect world crumbling one whisper at a time, and then Claire unfolded. The first letter, my heart nearly stopped. She cleared her throat and began to read. Her voice was steady, deliberate, like each word was a nail hammered into Robert's coffin. "Dear Claire, you're the only reason I haven't given up. I don't deserve you, but I swear when I make it, I'll put a ring on your finger and give you the world. I'll never forget the nights you stayed up quizzing me, or the days you skipped meals just to keep me fed. You're my everything, Claire. My future wife. Yours always. Robert, the words cut through the room like a blade. Melissa's eyes filled with tears, not the soft kind, but the hot, angry kind. She snatched the letter from Claire's hand, her fingers shaking as she read it for herself. And then she turned to Robert. You lied to me, she hissed. You married me on a lie. No. Robert cried, reaching for her. Melissa, it was years ago. She means nothing now. But Melissa yanked her hand away, her diamond ring catching the light like a shard of ice. You promised her everything, she said, her voice breaking. And now you stand here promising me the same. Which one of us is the fool, Robert? Her. Me. The crowd erupted, cameras flashing, voices rising in a storm of whispers. And I sat frozen, my chest aching with shame and fear. My son, my only son, had built his castle on sand, and now the tide was coming for him. But Claire wasn't finished. She reached into her purse again, and this time, what she pulled out wasn't just letters. It was a photograph. Claire held the photo high, her voice trembling with both rage and triumph. Maybe you can explain this to Robert, she said. Maybe you can explain to your wife and everyone here why you promised me more than just marriage. Why you left me with something I never told a soul, till now. The room fell into a stunned hush. Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Robert staggered back like he'd been struck. And Sandra's mother, felt the blood drain from my face. Because I knew exactly what Claire was about to reveal. The photograph hung in the air like a thundercloud, ready to burst. Every eye in that glittering ballroom was fixed on Claire, and every heartbeat felt like a drum pounding against my chest. Claire dashed on single quotes. Robert croaked, his voice breaking. He took a step forward, his hand stretched out like he could snatch the picture from her fingers, but she pulled it back, her eyes burning with the fire of years left unspoken. Don't. She spat. You had no problem when I carried the weight alone. You had no problem when I cried myself to sleep with only this photo under my pillow. But now you don't want the world to see. Melissa's face twisted with confusion. What is she talking about, Robert? What's in that photo? Robert's lips trembled, but no words came. And then, with a slow, deliberate hand, Claire turned the photograph outward for the crowd to see. Gasps rippled through the room. It was Claire, years younger, cradling a baby boy in her arms. His tiny face pressed against her chest, his dark hair just like Robert's when he was born. My God, I whispered. My knees nearly gave out. The room erupted in chaos, guests shouting, Melissa clutching her chest, the cameras flashing like lightning. Claire's voice cut through it all. This is your son, Robert. Our son? The child you never met because you left me behind when I needed you most. The words shattered whatever calm was left. Melissa staggered backward, her veil slipping as tears smeared her perfect makeup. A child. You, she turned to Robert, her face twisted in horror. You have a child. Robert's hands shook. No. Melissa, listen to It's not what it looks like. Claire snapped, her voice raw. Not what it looks like. He has your eyes. Your mouth. Don't you dare stand there and deny him. I pressed my hand to my lips, trembling. A grandson. I had a grandson I never knew existed. My son's flesh and blood? Hidden, abandoned, denied. The shame crushed me like a stone. Robert's voice rose, desperate. It was a mistake. Claire, you can't just a mistake. Claire's laugh was sharp, bitter. That boy is not a mistake. He's the only good thing that came out of loving you. While you chased your big-shot dreams, I was the one rocking him to sleep, wiping his tears, feeding him with tips from a diner. I kept quiet all these years because I thought maybe one day you'd do the right thing. But you didn't. You married someone else. You erased me. Her eyes filled with tears, but they burned hotter than fire. Not anymore, Robert. Not tonight. The crowd was no longer whispering, they were roaring. Some shouted in shock, others in anger, and some just lifted their phones higher. Recording the scandal of the century, Melissa tore her hand from Robert's grip, her voice trembling with rage. "You lied to me about Claire. You lied to me about everything. And now this." She pointed at the photo with a shaking finger. "You kept a child hidden. Your own child." "Melissa, please," Robert begged, but his words sounded small, pitiful. She stepped back, clutching her wedding gown as though it were strangling her. "You disgust me." Robert turned to me then, his eyes wild, pleading. "Mom, say something? Tell them it's not true." But I couldn't. My mouth opened, but no words came. I had nothing to stand on. Deep down, I knew Claire was telling the truth. The boy in that photograph, he was Robert's son. I could feel it in my bones, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't protect my child. The music had stopped, the laughter had died, and the night that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into a battlefield. Claire folded the photo back into her purse, her voice low but filled with power. "You built your future on my sacrifice. You left me broken, but I raised that boy strong. And one day soon, Robert, he'll know exactly what kind of man his father really is." Melissa let out a bitter laugh. "You're not a man, you're a fraud." She ripped the diamond ring from her finger and threw it at Robert's feet. The sound of it hitting the marble floor was louder than thunder in my ears. The crowd gasped. Gasps that felt like knives. My son bent down, trembling as if to pick up the ring. But Claire's next words froze him in place. "Don't bother, Robert," Claire said coldly. "You won't need that ring where you're going. Because after tonight, I promise I'll destroy everything you've built. Just like you destroyed me." The ballroom shook with chaos, guests shouting, Melissa storming out, and Robert collapsing into the chair behind him, his face buried in his hands. And me. I sat there, trembling, torn between the love of a mother and the horror of a witness, because I knew Claire's revenge had only just begun. The ballroom was no longer a wedding, it was a war zone. Melissa had stormed out, her veil dragging like a trail of smoke behind her. Guests spilled toward the exits, some whispering, some laughing, all of them clutching their phones as if they'd just won a ticket to the biggest scandal Chicago had ever seen. And my son? Robert sat slumped in a chair, his tuxedo wrinkled, his hair falling across his damp forehead. The proud man who once dreamed of becoming untouchable now looked like a boy caught stealing. Claire stood before him, black gown glistening under the harsh lights. Her purse clutched like a weapon. "This is just the beginning," she said softly, but her words carried across the silent room like a church bell. Robert lifted his head, his eyes wild, desperate. "Claire, please, don't do this. We can work something out. Money, whatever you want, I'll give it to you." Her laugh was bitter, sharp. "Money? You think this is about money? I supported you with money. I gave you years of my life. I gave you love. I gave you a child, and you threw us both away. No, Robert, this isn't about money. This is about justice." I could barely breathe. My own son, my flesh and blood, was being torn apart before my eyes. And yet, how could I stop her? Every word Claire spoke was true. She turned slowly, her eyes sweeping over the few guests who remained. "You all see Robert as a success, a lawyer, a man of wealth. But let me tell you the real story. He stepped on me to climb higher. He stepped on our child to look richer. And tonight in his wedding nighttime, stepping out of the shadows to remind him. The past doesn't stay buried forever." Someone in the crowd clapped. Another whistled. And then, like wildfire, the murmur spread. Claire had just turned Robert's perfect reputation into ash. Robert lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "Stop! You'll ruin me." But Claire didn't flinch. She leaned down, her face inches from his, and whispered words I'll never forget. "You ruined yourself." She shoved the letters into his lap, the photo falling on top of them. His promises, his lies, his secrets all laid bare for anyone to see. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg. But I stayed frozen in my chair. Because in that moment, I wasn't just Robert's mother. I was a witness to his downfall. And Claire wasn't finished. She straightened her back, her voice rising one last time. "Tomorrow morning, Robert, the whole city will know. I'll make sure every paper, every blog, every news station hears my story. Your career, your shiny new marriage, your reputation, it's all going to crumble. And maybe then you'll feel just a fraction of the pain you left me to carry." Robert's face drained of all color. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. And then she walked away. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing like a hammer on a coffin. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because her revenge had already struck, and its echo would follow Robert forever. I sat there, shaking, my hands trembling in my lap. A part of me wanted to chase after her, to tell her I was sorry, that I never knew about the boy that I would have helped. But I couldn't move. I was trapped between two worlds, the son I raised and the justice he deserved. When the doors closed behind Claire, the silence was unbearable. Robert finally lifted his head, his eyes wet, his voice cracked. "Mom," he whispered, "help me, please. Help me." But what could I do? How do you save a man from the storm he created with his own lies? I looked at him, my son, broken and desperate, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have an answer. That night was supposed to be the start of Robert's new life. Instead, it was the night everything he built collapsed. And Claire didn't just take her revenge. She left a mark on all of us, because in her eyes, I saw not just anger, but strength. The strength of a woman who refused to stay forgotten. And as a mother, I was left with a question that still haunts me. Do I protect my son from the consequences of his betrayer? Do I stand aside and let Claire's revenge finish what it started? Sometimes the greatest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the very people we once loved and trusted the most. Claire gave her all her love, her money, her loyalty, and in return, she was abandoned. But what Robert never realized is this: when you break a good heart, you create a storm that can come back to destroy you. So tell me, dear viewers, do you think Claire was right to